This is me. If something happens to me or my family or all of us, that
I want everybody to just come home. Like wherever they're at, come home.
Only for like a second, because I just saw the lights come on and it was more just like, you're an idiot.
Let's find this evil creature.
Why did you do this to my child?
That they were looking for sensationalism and they were looking for the monster. I'm not the monster image.
When you type in Shanann Watts on Facebook, you'll see the profile of a happy mom and wife who tirelessly shared family photos and videos. To everyone, the Watts seemed like a family living the American dream. 2 kids, fancy cars, a big house, lovely vacations. But sadly, it was just a dream. A dream Shanann dreamt until her tragic death. We've all heard about this case of the monster dad that shocked America and broke hearts worldwide. And we all wonder why he did it and how he could even do it. Now, I'll share my theory with my American friend Elizabeth Betty Blackbridge.
This case of the Watts murders is chilling because it just goes to show how you can never know exactly who your spouse is or what they're capable of.
At the center of this story is Shanann Watts, a beautiful mother and woman born on January 10, 1984, as the elder child of Sandra and Frank Ryzuczek. Her father is of Polish descent and her mother of Italian. Essentially, a classic Catholic family. Sandra and Frank had 2 children, daughter Shanann and son Frankie. Shanann was a shy little girl. She finished elementary school and later Pinecrest High School.
The Zdravković family was from New Jersey, and they later moved to North Carolina.
She married very young to Leonard King in 2002. They lived in Charlotte, South Carolina. At that time, Shanann worked in a cell phone store, but soon got a job at Dirty South, a tire sales company. Shanann was actually the manager of that store.
She worked so hard getting this life that she'd always wanted. She had a beautiful home and a wonderful life, and she built the house, which was very big and very grandiose and almost like a southern mansion.
I was 25 years old when I built my first house. My family doesn't come from money. We always worked hard for what we had, and I did. I bought my first house at 25 years old, and that was the biggest accomplishment I felt I've ever done because I did it by myself. I did it by working my tail off.
The owner of Dirty South was Hisham Abu Tabar, a 31-year-old exotic businessman of Middle Eastern descent. Always well-dressed, muscular, always looking good. Cars, trucks, planes. You know how it goes, the classic story.
Is alleged that she had an affair with her boss from her job, but I'm not sure if this could possibly be true because she loved her job, and why would she put her husband and her boss through this?
On one side, a student husband she supports, and on the other, a macho boss. I don't know. Anything's possible. She was in her early 20s then. And the 20s are actually the years when girls like to experiment, especially when they have an exotic boss.
In fact, Shanann was a Capricorn, and as we all know, Capricorns really push their jobs and really push to work to have financial security. Shanann really worked hard at her job and spent a lot of hours.
She even slept at work several times.
And it got to the point where her and Leonard, they didn't even stay in the same bed anymore. They weren't sleeping together, and she just continued to work and work and work.
When Leonard asked her what was going on, she just stayed silent. She didn't want to say anything. And that's when her marriage actually started to fall apart.
Good relationship, gone bad. And I remember coming out feeling the weakest I've ever felt in my life. Like I was no good. I wasn't good enough. My insecurities got deeper, stronger, and I felt like I was not worthy of anything.
The marriage ended in divorce. This also led to Shanann realizing she was feeling sick all the time and was always exhausted, and then she got diagnosed with lupus.
I started losing a lot of my hair. I started having a lot of body aches, a lot of discomforts in my body, a lot of things that were limiting my everyday.
For a young woman, such a diagnosis was a huge blow. And Shanann thought, especially after the 2009 divorce, that she would never find love again. She was so disappointed in life and started feeling worse and worse.
So this must have been horrible for her at the time, but she had friends and she had a support system that allowed her to work her way through this health crisis.
Like you're on top of the world when you have people that you surround yourself with that make you better. Like they don't bring the bad out of you, they bring the good out of you.
One of her friends suggested to her that she friend a Chris Watts on Facebook. He was a year younger than her. He sent her a friend request and she thought back and forth as to whether or not she would accept it.
My friend sent me a friend suggestion for him. It was actually his cousin's wife. And I deleted it. I was like, I'm not interested. I don't want to meet a guy. Bye-bye.
But then finally she just said, what the heck? Let's do it. I need to move on with my life and we'll see what happens from there.
A few days later, she found him on Facebook and accepted the request.
So the two of them, Chris and Shanann, started talking on Facebook, messaging back and forth. And she finally told him about the lupus diagnosis, thinking that he would just run away, that he would be scared. But it turns out he didn't. In fact, he pursued her very actively and really pushed to get to know her more.
And because of my health challenges, because I got so sick, I let him in. And he only knew me at that time. He knew me at my worst, and he accepted me.
So, who is Chris Watts, and what does he bring to the picture here?
Chris Watts was born on May 16, 1985 in Spring Lake to father Ronnie and mother Cindy Watts. And he is definitely the biggest scoundrel in the modern world.
Chris wasn't a loner, like a lot of people say. He had a small group of friends of 10 people, and he wasn't the most talkative person, but he just was, there. He was just the guy that was always hanging out somewhere.
A quiet type, a classic introvert who doesn't express his thoughts and feelings in front of others. Teachers at school adored him. He was an excellent student, and he wanted to become part of a NASCAR mechanic team one day.
So Chris Watts, he seemed to be a little chubby when he was in high school and didn't really have a girlfriend.
He was a chubby nerd that girls laughed at. Maybe that left some consequences on him.
Now his mother said that she never saw him get angry, ever, which I think is very, very strange and makes me wonder, was he keeping all this rage inside of him? Was it just ready to explode at any minute?
After finishing high school, he went to some technical chemical college but didn't finish it. He was too attached to his mother and returned home. A classic mama's boy.
So flash forward a few years, and Chris Watts is working with Anadarko Petroleum.
He worked as an operator in the oil fields. He was diligent, punctual, precise. He even had a photographic memory. But I shudder just thinking about how much Shanann loved this scoundrel.
He met Shanann. They fell in love, but there was some darkness under the relationship. His family did not like her at all.
And why didn't they like her? Well, Shanann was too honest. Honest to a fault, as they say. She wasn't a pretender. She didn't present herself as sweet and nice, only to show a different face later. No, she let him know right from the start that she had lupus, that she could be difficult because of it. that she was demanding, that she had some standards. And he accepted all of that.
During their dating period, when they would go visit his parents, she would openly criticize Christopher and talk about how he was chubby, and she really wanted him to go to the gym and get more fit, which blew the minds of his parents.
His mother was upset that his future daughter-in-law wouldn't let her son eat, say, 5 pieces of apple pie. I mean, it's terrible.
Shanann was a perfectionist. Is she criticizing Christopher, or is she just trying to motivate him to help himself, to let him get better?
Tell me, which woman doesn't criticize her husband? You shouldn't overdo it. But if she doesn't criticize and advise you, know that she doesn't love you.
Christopher never complained when she would criticize him, or she would give him suggestions as to what he should do with his life to make it better. Did he feel anything inside of himself? Did he hide the feelings of being criticized by her?
He is the best thing that has ever happened to me. So with that being said, know that no matter how hard life gets, no matter how low you feel, know that deep down, like in your heart, that there's a purpose.
Let me tell you something. The Watts didn't mind Shanann criticizing their son. What bothered them was that she was of the Catholic faith, since they were evangelicals. That was what troubled them. And they found some stupid reason to argue with her, and they refused to come to their wedding, which was scheduled for November 3rd, 2012. Of course, this affected Chris a lot. But at that moment, Shanann was much more important to him than his parents.
At their wedding, she was very proud of her husband, and you can see in the videos that are on the internet that she loved him and she was showing him off, and she felt like the princess, the queen of this wedding. And you could tell that he was so happy, and he was smiling and holding her and giving her kisses. It was really quite beautiful. And you can even see that he lost some weight for that wedding, which I'm sure thrilled her to no end.
It was truly a wonderful wedding, after which they, of course, went on a honeymoon to Myrtle Beach in South Carolina. During that period, they had a house that Shanann built, so they had a place to live. But due to her lupus problems, which prevented her from working, and because they didn't have financial support from their parents, who were poor, the two of them fell into financial trouble. Chris knew nothing about finances. He couldn't even fill out a payment slip or pay the electricity bill. But from the start of his marriage, he regularly gave his paycheck to Shanann, and she managed the budget.
Shortly after the wedding, the two of them took a trip together to Colorado. And it turns out they loved Colorado. Their architecture, the scenery, the weather, and soon thereafter they moved to Colorado.
In 2013, they relocated to Colorado, where Chris got a transfer with the oil company Anadarko, where he worked.
By going to Colorado, Shanann has an opportunity to start a new life. She can completely separate herself from her first marriage, and of course separate herself from this very bad relationship she now has with her husband's parents. So her and Christopher can totally start fresh and move forward in their lives. One of the first things, of course, they must do in Colorado is they bought a house. So somehow this home in Colorado, I find it to be very, very strange. You can see this house in a lot of her videos that she has on YouTube. It has a beautiful entryway, and it walks straight into a foyer that all of a sudden the ceiling gets very low, almost like a cave that you're going into. It's all very clean and very neat, and it's almost like a hotel. There doesn't seem to be anything out of place.
After moving to the town of Frederick, Shanann got a job at the Children's Hospital, Colorado, as a human resources specialist. She earned $63,000 a year, and Chris earned $90,000 a year. His salary was actually $7,500 a month, and hers was $5,000 a month. Together, they had over $12,000 a month. However, Shanann soon became pregnant. She shared everything about her pregnancy, from moments leading up to the birth, the countdown, and so on social media. Chris was with her the whole time. He took her to checkups. The grandmothers knitted hats for the baby in the colors of his favorite team, the Steelers, black and yellow, as Chris hoped to have a son who would love rugby and the same team. Finally, on December 17, 2013, their first daughter, Bella Marie Watts, was born. Chris and Shanann were overjoyed. In 2014, Shanann became pregnant again. Chris believed and hoped the baby would be a boy. But on the ultrasound, they saw the baby would be a girl. And on July 17, 2015, Celeste Catherine Watts, called Cece, was born. Shanann was a phenomenal mother. She adored her girls. However, remembering her own childhood and how much she suffered because her parents couldn't afford toys, clothes, and many nice things, she felt the need to spend too much on her children. So if she bought a crib, it was the best crib. If she bought a stroller, it was the most modern and, how should I say, trendy stroller. Then the most expensive toys, branded clothes, and so on. And by using the credit card recklessly, she realized they were in serious financial trouble.
Early in their marriage, they did sell the house back in North Carolina. After they moved to Colorado, even though there was salaries, they were making very good salaries, it seems that they had really overextended themselves. And it turns out that Chris and Shanann had to file bankruptcy at some point.
In our country, there is no option for personal bankruptcy. So my friend Betty will explain everything about it.
Bankruptcy has become more commonplace in the United States, and it doesn't really have the social stigma that it used to have. So filing bankruptcy is not an abnormal thing for an American family. A lot of people file bankruptcy in the United States when they've overextended themselves. In order to file bankruptcy in the United States, you need to go to court and you need to give up your rights to certain things. Of course, their home, they could keep that always, and their cars, but they were able to get rid of any credit card debt, and any student loans that they had to keep those as well. Those could not be given up. The student loans they had were $70,000, and the house they had was worth $600,000. So even though they did file bankruptcy, they still had to continue paying on these bills.
In 2016, Shanann, at the urging of her friend, started using some products aimed at improving health and losing weight primarily. And soon she started working for a company called Level, which was involved in direct sales.
With this company, Shanann was super happy, you could tell. She'd found, it seems, a good clique of female friends, people that supported her, and you saw her on social media all the time, talking about how much she loved her husband, how her children were such a blessing, and this seemed to be a really great time in her life.
In America, that's how it is. When it comes to business, especially direct sales, you have to become some kind of reality star. People have to like you to buy what you're selling. You have to be known on social media. And Shanann involved the whole family in it.
This happiness that she had at home really helps promote her business in the sense that people want to be like her. When you watch the videos, you really do want to be like her. Her joy really showed in her life.
She literally filmed everything: birthdays, some celebrations, Christmas, New Year, and so on. She filmed her husband Chris playing with the kids, family lunches on Sundays. She literally filmed everything.
Making the mini cannolis.
I like to claim that I could probably cook. I can't.
at all. So I'm gonna let my wife do all the cooking. She's gonna make up some Thrive Bites for us.
And I'm gonna go wash my hands real fast.
Uh-oh. She's gonna leave me here alone. Oh, we got some people joining. Bella, look. Got people looking at us.
You can even see in the videos that the husband, that Christopher, really started to support Shanann. He used the products, he used these patches, they both used the patches, and you could just see the happiness between the two of them working towards more successful work life for her.
She advertised the products she sold and advertised her husband. I have to say that Chris Watts became a buff, handsome guy promoting a healthy lifestyle with his looks. I'm sure many women envied Shanann for Chris, or at least dreamed that their husband would look like that. And the orders for those shakes and patches were endless. Even her former boss, Hisham Abu Tabar, became her customer.
Also in these videos, you could see the different personalities really coming out between the two of them. Shanann seemed very engaged and really craving the attention of all of her followers that she had on Facebook. And Chris was usually in the background being the supportive husband, helping her and being her foundation. You could really tell that she was an extrovert and that he was an introvert. And you could see this more and more as time progressed and more videos were posted.
Shanann decided who would wear what, how they would behave, and what they would say before going live on Facebook. Chris often stayed silent or just smiled. Or he would say, "Yes, that's right," when she asked him to confirm something she was saying.
So she put a lot of time preparing these videos, getting her family ready, portraying her family to her Facebook audience seemed to take a lot of her time. Shanann really wanted to be loved, and it seemed like she thrived on this interaction she had with her audience.
In fact, she created the image of a happy mom working from home and living the American dream.
In terms of her appearance, she always seemed very well put together. Her production levels were great.
Say hi.
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 We also got introduced to her two daughters, Bella and Celeste. Two beautiful, sweet little girls. But you could tell even these moments with her children on the videos were choreographed. She knew what she was doing and she expected a certain standard from her children and from her husband on these videos.
I'm getting my hair clipped.
For why are you getting hair clips?
Because I'm not sucking my thumb.
You're not sucking your thumb. You're a big girl now, right? Uh-oh.
Everyone wanted to be like her, to have such a house, such a husband, such beautiful, cheerful children. And they believed the product she promoted would help them achieve that.
Good job, Bella. I think that's it. If I forget, I'll come back. We'll come back with Cece and Bella later, and we'll do the Here We Go Steelers chants, because they love it.
You could really tell in the videos that she was the leader of the family, which in and of itself is not a bad thing. But in retrospect, you look back and you see the smiles and you see the well-choreographed life that she had with her husband and children.
Nice.
But there was a darkness that was going to come out.
Say goodbye to everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Hey everybody, so we're here at the last day of the event. It's kind of crazy in here. It's like 25,000 plus people here. It's absolutely mind-blowing.
Shanann started earning really well. And unfortunately, I have to say, the money went a little to her head. She started acting like a boss to everyone. Although for every woman who is a Capricorn in the horoscope, it's natural to act like a boss. Her annual income, according to many, was much higher than her husband's, who earned $90,000 a year. And Chris went from being a husband who was her biggest support in work to being very jealous. How could she earn more than him? Where was his masculinity in that? Actually, a very outdated view from this narcissistic mama's boy. And when Shanann got a Lexus SUV from her company as a reward for her achievements, that's when he wanted to die of envy. And it's better he died.
If we go back to Chris, we can see that his family, they didn't seem very content that he moved to Colorado. They obviously weren't happy with his wife. And there was not a lot of visiting going on. The grandchildren didn't see their grandparents back in North Carolina very often. How does this make Chris feel? How does this affect him as a husband and a man in this relationship? It seems that even in these videos, you can see his face, and he wasn't quite okay with everything that was going on. He seemed to be shutting down emotionally. He wasn't happy with his life being shared so publicly.
A classic chauvinistic jerk. Instead of being happy, his wife was fighting to get them out of debt, that they finally stood on their own feet, that they surpassed their parents materially. He starts fooling around, acting like some macho seducer. First, he used the services of a girl who was a prostitute, and she described him as a very violent lover.
He was very rough, I would say. Very rough. And, the best way I can describe it is as he's almost zoned out into a different person.
Then he enters a secret love affair with a young man named Trent Volt.
Chris said that he was in love with me.
Trent Volt met Chris through a dating app. They met in a bungalow in Wyoming, which borders Colorado. And there they hooked up and spent the night together. After that, their relationship lasted a full 10 months, from June 2017 to March 2018. Otherwise, I wouldn't be dealing with his homosexual episodes now. But generally, Chris was in love with this guy. He even paid for his boyfriend's lip enhancement. Imagine, it's crazy. He even told him that when it came to oral sex, he never had better pleasure than with him. It's not unusual that even here in Serbia, some men get silicone in their lips to look more appealing to some macho guys, say, from old Herzegovina. In the end, it's not important. But what is important is Trent's statement that Chris told him he was trapped in a loveless marriage but was too afraid to leave because of the kids.
Chris said there's got to be some way to get this effing bee out of my life.
Maybe for him, it was a loveless marriage, but not because Shanann didn't love him, but because he didn't love her. Actually, Chris Watts loved only himself and his genitals, and no one can convince me otherwise.
Hey Santa, where's your phone?
In the garage?
I wanted it.
Oh.
Santa, you gained some weight this year. Come on, Santa. Hold on, Santa. I gotta find the kids because they're kind of scared. Sit down, Santa. Have a seat. I'll try to get the kids.
Ho, ho, ho.
Here's Santa.
Yes.
Where's the phone?
On top of your car in the garage?
I needed it for pictures. Hold on. I gotta get the phone. This is hard. As one parent. I gotta get the phone so I can get pictures. Oh, please. My husband's a genius. Doesn't listen.
So Shanann was on Facebook a lot, sharing moments from her life. And she even shared the moment when she talked to her husband about their third child. You can watch the video, and he seemed a little shocked by it all.
Somewhere between May 3rd and 9th, 2018, Shanann got pregnant. And on June 11th, she posted a video where she decided to wear a shirt that said, "Oops, we did it again," and to surprise Chris when he got home from work.
We did it again.
Just look at how that jerk grins, not wanting that child at all.
Introverts are often not happy with everything being exposed to the whole world.
So pink means...
That's just the test.
I know. It just says the pink is going to be girls.
I don't know. Just the test.
That's awesome. Guess when you want to, it happens.
He took this beautiful gift from God and turned it around and seemed to turn his back on her, and even told her, which he later admitted to, that he didn't want the child and he thought it was a bad idea.
Hey Bella, how many babies do I have in my belly?
5.
Whoa.
Whoa.
That's a lot of babies.
Once Shanann said that she was pregnant, we found out that he was already seeing this other woman.
His boyfriend left him, so he found a girlfriend. Genius. Those are the complexes that, when triggered in a coward, cause total chaos. And soon you'll find out who that woman was. The mistress, who became one of the most hated women in the world because of everything that happened.
She was a geologist, and they worked together, and they had meetings together. They've shown text messages and emails between the two of them. And at first, it just didn't seem, they were just work colleagues. But we would later find out that these work colleagues quickly became intertwined with each other, and their messages really heated up.
The name of this woman is Nicole Lee Kessinger. Nicole was born on July 3rd, 1988, in Colorado. At the time of their meeting, she was 30 and he was 33. She was a geological engineer. However, what neither Chris nor others knew about her was that she was very troubled in her youth. She had problems with drugs, with alcohol, and because of these vices, she was arrested multiple times. But it always ended with no measures or penalties being imposed. She also had a report for violence. It might even have been an attempted murder, if we look at the details. Namely, when she was 17, the mother of that boy caught her with her son performing oral sex on him at that moment. And when, shocked and angry, she asked Nicole to leave her house, Nicole grabbed a knife from the kitchen counter and stabbed the lady in the back. And if that's not attempted murder, then I really don't know. But generally, there was never a report or conviction for it. Simply unbelievable. And all this resulted in Nicole becoming a spoiled brat whose father, Dwayne, provided her with everything she wanted. Chris and Nicole worked at the same company, Anadarko. However, allegedly, they didn't know each other before June 2018. I doubt that because American companies are known for holding celebrations or parties every 6 months, so that employees from different branches can meet, socialize, and know each other. Because they are actually considered one community, one family. Maybe it's just that Chris didn't notice her earlier because he was in a tumultuous relationship with his boyfriend, whom he adored. But as soon as that relationship with the guy ended, this girl came into the picture.
So on June 17th, which is Father's Day in the United States, Shanann posts a video on Facebook talking about how much she loves her husband and all that he's done for her, and he's the foundation for their marriage.
I couldn't have asked God for a better man in my life because he's so supportive. He takes care of me. He's sexy. He's good looking. And he does take care of our girls. Like, he's probably the best father I could have asked for my children.
And sadly, we also find out that in June of that same year, he started his communications with this woman that he worked with.
My daddy is a hero. He helps me grow up strong. He helped me snuggle too. He reads me books. He ties my shoes. My daddy, I love you.
He had a special app that, when opened, looked like a calculator. However, when a certain code was entered into that calculator, all secret messages and pictures with his mistress were displayed. Of course, like with all his previous lovers, he initially told lies. He presented himself as an unmarried man. He would even take off his wedding ring, then put it back on when he got home. He played the role of the perfect, desirable, and romantic man without flaws that everyone dreams of, both women and men. That was his mask. But don't forget what I'm about to tell you, and you can write it down if needed. The more beautiful and perfect the mask, the darker the shadow behind it. Chris Watts, of course, wanted someone to respect his personality. But personality, he didn't even have. He actually spent his whole life adapting to the people around him. He changed his behavior according to the needs of those people. He was totally dependent on them. And when a new person appeared in his life, he would start to change and present himself to that person as Mr. Perfect. When we watch Chris in the videos, it's clear that he mimics the emotions of the person next to him. When Shanann smiles, he smiles a second later. When she gets serious, he stops smiling and becomes dead serious. This is a dangerous form of manipulation, showing he's a man without a soul or character. He wasn't suffering in the marriage, let me tell you. How can someone without emotions suffer? Sex with Shanann became boring for him. Instead of honestly telling her so they could work on it and try something new, he cheated on her with different people who seemed more open to his perverse fantasies. Nicole seemed that way to him. He immediately assessed that he could get anal sex from her. She wasn't prettier or more attractive than his wife, but she was equally dominant. She had a rough, masculine energy that he liked, as we would say, tomboyish. He befriended her at work and told her he was separated and in the process of divorce. However, Nicole knew very well he was married because she had searched for Shanann Watts' name on Google back in September 2017. She probably wanted to lose weight, and someone told her about those patches and shakes and the name of the person selling them. And of course, Google directed her to Shanann's Facebook profile. And as we know, Chris Watts is in every video on that profile. So Nicole Kessinger can lie all she wants about not knowing he was married and had 2 kids. Oh, come on. Anyway, they met and exchanged numbers in mid-June. They started texting a little. Shanann first noticed that Chris lost interest in her video clips. He started saying he had to go to the gym at that moment. Then he said he needed to buy some tool he needed. He constantly found excuses to avoid it. Shanann reacted strongly to this. According to her first neighbor Nathan Trenastic, our man, likely of Croatian descent from Dalmatia, they argued so much at the end of June that the whole neighborhood heard. Shanann was a dominant person, capable. She liked to keep everything under control. Even if she yelled at her husband, she was probably trying to knock some sense into him, to make him snap out of it. After all, she was pregnant, nervous, irritable. That's why it's called a different state. It's not easy having lupus, 2 kids, a demanding job, and a baby on the way. And we all know very well who and what he is. Just an ordinary, incompetent, warty frog, she turned into her prince. At that time, on June 22nd, Shanann's parents arrived to watch the kids because she and Chris went on a business weekend to San Diego. They stayed in a beautiful luxury hotel. Of course, Shanann's company paid for all this. The best promoters went on these trips for job training.
We're just enjoying San Diego. It's absolutely gorgeous here. It's been pretty nice. I'm sitting here at the pool with everybody. Woo! Hello! Hi! And Nikki just hit 12K.
Shanann's best friend, Nicole Atkinson, was also there, who would later become very important in this story. However, you can see in these videos that Chris is absent and looking off into the distance. Shanann was so caught up in the events that she didn't even notice. However, later when they were alone in the room, she decided to give him a lot of attention and love, hoping to neutralize the problems that started appearing in their marriage. She also wanted to use that weekend to focus on each other, because upon returning, she was supposed to go on vacation with the kids for a month and a half.
During that summer, Shanann decided to take a trip with her 2 kids back to North Carolina.
For 6 weeks. Like, that's a long time. But I'm super excited. It's gonna be fun. We get to spend time with the family, which is always fun, adventurous.
And I think she was also trying to maybe give her husband some time, let him have some space to think about things, and hopefully fall in love with this new baby that she was pregnant with.
Arriving in Aberdeen, North Carolina, Shanann enjoyed the attention her parents and brother gave her and the kids. She was texting Chris, but noticed he rarely replied to her messages. She didn't even know Chris was eagerly waiting for her to leave and had already scheduled a date with Nicole Kessinger the next day. They went to a restaurant and then to her place.
Actually, he started to see this woman more often. They started sleeping together. This relationship really heated up fast, got very physical very quickly, and the 2 of them were unstoppable at this point.
There's that famous photo where Nicole poses at the bathroom door in a swimsuit, and in the mirror above the sink, you can see Chris. The 2 of them, like 2 selfish hedonists, like 2 psychopaths, narcissistic people ready to destroy everything around them for their passion.
Meanwhile, Nicole is texting with her best friend, telling her best friend that this was the best sex she ever had, the sex with Chris, and that she is completely enamored with him and he has her heart.
And we should believe that her friend didn't check on Facebook who Chris was. Oh, come on. Of course she checked. And of course, they talked about it and advised each other on how Nicole could make him divorce. She spent hours those days searching on Google for wedding dresses and advice on the topic. Dear advice, the man I'm seeing says he'll leave his wife. What should I actually do?
On the second day, when Shanann was back east, He actually brought his mistress home into the house. And allegedly, she was helping him with his diet and his exercise routine.
That's what she later told the police. But please, who brings a lover home to show him what diet to follow and what exercises to do?
Maybe in the bedroom she was helping him with more exercise than we really want to know about.
She didn't come for that. She came to see the house and know where she'd live if she managed to take him from Shanann. She praised the house for being big, beautiful, just to her taste. But Chris told her he always wanted a small ranch-style house. And she asked him, "Then why did you buy this house?" Chris said it was all Shanann's fault, because she wanted a big house to throw those luxurious big parties to show off to the world, and for them to admire everything she has.
Hey guys, so we're here at a local at my house and everyone's gonna taste the Pro Bars.
He also mentioned that he had no say in anything regarding the house. But Shanann let him choose only the color of the facade, and that was it. And he chose brown. Chris also bragged or complained that his monthly mortgage payment was $2,800, and that he was tired of having so much deducted from his salary. But when Shanann wants something, she gets it. I believe Nicole felt a terrible sting of jealousy when she heard that, because she immediately realized there was no D in divorce here. She immediately saw the large framed photos of the Watts family in the house. She also saw the large, expensive marital bed in the bedroom. And then she decided not to sleep with Chris, but to make a scene. She started questioning him about his marriage like a real cop. Why is the divorce taking so long? When was the last time he had an emotional or sexual relationship with his wife? Does he use any protection and so on? Chris got tangled up. He didn't know what to lie anymore. Nicole even asked if he lied to her about the divorce, and Chris said no. She asked if he was trying to have a third child with his wife since they weren't using protection. And imagine what he answered. He said no. She got angry and demonstratively left the house.
I think it was really with Shanann's trip back east that Chris decided that he was done with the marriage.
And I think he decided that earlier when he was with his boyfriend called Hot Cherry Lips. I think he decided that then.
And while his wife and 2 children were back east, enjoying time with the family, Nicole and Chris decided they took a trip together to the White Dunes, and they did sand surfing, and you can see videos that they took of each other, and you can see that Christopher's taken off his wedding band. The 2 of them are giggling and laughing and taking selfies and acting like teenagers.
You're so damn sexy.
Found a pot for the lid, as we say in my area.
Nicole was saying how special he was to her, and this was the best thing that ever happened.
Thank you so much for coming out here with me, Christopher. I am having a wonderful time. You mean a lot to me, and I'm glad that you're having a blast. I am so out of breath.
I must mention that they went on the trip in Shanann's Lexus. Chris even took a picture of Nicole next to his wife's car. I mean, perversion.
At this point, it seems like there's no turning back. Nicole and Christopher were together, and it seems that poor Shanann and those children were already out of the picture.
Shanann wrote to him, but he always replied late. He'd say he didn't hear the phone, was vacuuming, or doing something else. I think he was always finding some excuse.
She was hoping that he was going to miss them, but he simply didn't.
He only started replying to her messages in mid-July when a fierce argument broke out between Shanann and Chris's mother, Cindy Watts. So what actually happened? Shanann took the kids to the Watts, and her mother-in-law served hazelnut ice cream, which little Cece was allergic to. She was allergic to all nuts and couldn't eat anything containing even traces of them, because there was, of course, a risk of choking. When Shanann realized what her mother-in-law was doing, she grabbed the ice creams and threw them in the trash. And she asked, "Are you trying to kill my child?" And Cindy Watts said it was the first time she'd heard the little one was allergic. I mean, total madness. And then Shanann just lost it and started yelling at her mother-in-law, accusing her of not loving her grandchildren if she didn't know such an important fact about them. And Cindy said to take her kids and leave her house immediately. Imagine the scandal and rudeness of a mother-in-law and grandmother. Shanann returned with the kids to her parents, upset. She immediately started writing to Chris about what happened, and she asked, "How is it possible you didn't tell your mother that Cece is allergic? Are you out of your mind?" And he said that wasn't possible, and that he did tell her. She demanded he call his parents and ask them to apologize to her. However, he didn't do it. He was too busy with his new lover, and this whole situation was really irritating him. As July was ending, Chris was meeting with Nicole more intensely. He told her he had to travel to North Carolina to spend part of the vacation with the kids. When she heard that, she was furious. She told him, "When you get divorced and we start living together, you need to know I don't want your kids living with us. I'll give you a child, a son, your first son." She also expressed concern about Chris being in the same house as Shanann, and she told him, "If you sleep with her, I'll leave you. Choose her or me." Given how serious this senseless relationship became, it's hard to imagine Nicole Kessinger didn't know Shanann was pregnant, as she claimed to the police. Everything about Shanann's pregnancy was and still is on her Facebook. So the question arises, who gave Chris the idea before the trip to replace Shanann's migraine medication with a dangerous drug that causes miscarriage? Was it Nicole or someone else? I'll leave that for you to decide. Now, we'll analyze the timeline of the last 2 weeks of Shanann's life. Tuesday, July 31st, 2018. Chris arrived in Aberdeen, North Carolina. Shanann and the girls met him at the airport. Of course, Shanann recorded it. She immediately noticed something was off. Chris was very cold towards her. He kissed her only once on the cheek, more like a sister, and that was it.
Christopher wanted nothing to do with her. He had actually told Nicole that he would not touch his wife.
Now, some people say that in this airport video, on the right side, Chris's lover, Nicole Kessinger, is passing by. There were many comments about it. I can't say whether it's her or not. But in this case, anything is possible. Anyway, they left the airport and went to the Rozuchek family home, Shanann's parents, and they stayed there overnight. The next day, August 1st, they packed up and went to the seaside town of Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, where they rented the same apartment they stayed in for their honeymoon. Shanann's father was, of course, with them since it was a 2-bedroom apartment. Renting such an apartment costs $2,500 and up per week. But Shanann didn't want to save on her attempt to save the marriage.
And we see that Shanann is really setting up to try and renew her love with her husband.
In front of that tourist complex, there was a children's playground with trampolines and various activities for kids. And Shanann took the girls there. At the playground was a young woman named Michelle Greer, who brought her 3 sons, and the 2 of them immediately met there. And you know how it goes, moms chat, kids play, happily jumping around, 2 girls, 3 boys, what a lovely story. Now, Michelle Greer says Shanann was very kind and nice, but Chris behaved very strangely. He stood aside and didn't say a word. Later, this woman took pictures of Shanann and the kids. And look, please, what she captured. Shanann is sitting with her father and taking pictures of Bella. And please, what is Chris doing behind her? Texting his lover. I don't know. You tell me what he's doing here. By the way, it was the first time the girls saw the ocean. They took them to the beach. And at first, they were naturally a bit scared. But their grandpa Frank encouraged them, and they eventually managed to get into the water. And while watching these videos, we must pay attention to Chris's behavior. As you can see, he avoids looking at Shanann. He's absent, both emotionally and physically distant from her. He looks like a cat that just returned from a February fling, all exhausted from work and effort. Thin with tight skin on his face, all drained, all squeezed like a bedbug.
Even Shanann's friends started to notice that something wasn't quite right.
And don't think your wife doesn't notice such changes. Shanann noticed too. And there on the beach, it was clear to her that this drained, exhausted man in red shorts wasn't her Chris, but some other man, some stranger. A stranger who, instead of buying some gift for his kids, some ice cream, acts like a fool. And somewhere out there, he stares in the distance. That day, he buys some meaningless jewelry for his lover and sends her pictures of the necklace over the phone. I mean, total madness. Like some kid at a fair.
During one night, they get in bed together, and he just rolls over onto his side and won't even touch her. So Shanann gets up and starts crying and leaves the room. And it's just heartbreaking for me to hear this story going on.
He refused to touch Shanann, to hug her, to even touch her, not to mention making love. They didn't even sleep in the same room, and she cried in the living room and the bathroom. She cried quietly, so he wouldn't hear her.
And this is so cruel and so selfish of him to do this to her.
One evening, Chris started yelling at the kids for no reason, and Shanann exploded. She openly told him his behavior was strange and repulsive, that he kissed her on the cheek only when he arrived at the airport, and nothing since, that his obsession with his appearance and branded clothes was horrifying. And she naturally asked if there was another woman involved. He coldly denied it. As they say, cold as a snake.
I can't imagine what must have been going on in her mind and her heart to have this situation that was so awful. Shanann was outraged, and the text messages between her and her best friend are heartbreaking.
On August 3rd, Shanann's mother joined them. And that day, Shanann started texting her friends, explaining that her marriage was falling apart. On August 4th, they went to the pool and later to the Big Crab restaurant for lunch, then back to the apartment for an afternoon rest. Actually, Chris didn't even go to the apartment. He wandered off somewhere. he went for a walk. And since Shanann was alone, she wrote to her friend that she didn't even know where her husband went, and she didn't know when he would return. And she felt that he no longer cared about the kids or the baby on the way.
She discovered that the baby was a boy, and I think maybe she felt that this would be the solution to all the problems they were having.
Actually, before she went on the trip, Shanann planned to have a gender reveal party. It's a gathering for friends and family where the baby's gender is revealed.
So then we go back to the naming of this little boy. They named him Nico Lee, and that is a very strange name, Nico Lee, which you kind of look at it and you realize that he's having an affair with a Nicole. Nico Lee, Nicole, these names are so similar. It is just mind-blowing.
However, due to the uncertainty in the marriage, she canceled that party, which greatly worried her friends. Moreover, she wrote to them that she believed Chris was cheating on her. Her friends assured her he wasn't that type of man, but she explained to them that his father also had mistresses when Chris went to college. She found it odd that Chris changed his phone screensaver. Instead of a picture of the four of them, he put sand dunes. When Shanann asked why he changed the picture, Chris replied, "I just like it. It's cool." Shanann also noticed he stopped wearing his wedding ring on his left hand. He said the ring was uncomfortable. Then Shanann sent her friend a picture of Chris watching TV, completely ignoring her. She asked him, "Why did you have a child with me if you're not interested anymore?" He replied, "I wanted a son." She said, "Then why did you marry me?" Chris thought for a bit and said, "Because we loved each other." Genius. Shanann told him, "I still love you. You're the father of my children. But it seems you prefer the bachelor life." After that, Chris just got up and said he was going to sleep with the girls. Imagine that! Instead of massaging his pregnant wife or offering her the big bed with the kids, he left her cramped on the couch in the living room. Rude, selfish jerk.
This is the exact moment when Shanann should have asked herself, what is going on with my husband? Where is this reaction coming from to not want this baby?
On August 5th, they packed up and returned to Aberdeen, to Shanann's parents' house. By then, Chris and Shanann had stopped talking to each other. They only communicated formally about the kids. They texted each other because Shanann didn't want her parents to notice something was wrong between them. That was a big mistake. If she had told them, it would have been a different story. Anyway, Shanann texted Chris saying she wanted a divorce, and that as soon as they returned to Colorado, they'd put the house up for sale and look for another place. Maybe even in another state. Chris just stayed silent. He didn't write a word, but he was silent as a stone. Shanann texted her friend, "As soon as I return, I'll start selling things, unenroll the kids from daycare. I need to find a place for me and the kids, but definitely not in North Carolina." She sent her friend a picture showing how pale, exhausted, sleepless, and sad she looked. On August 6th, they visited Chris's grandmother. Then Chris went alone to visit his parents, evangelists. There he wrote a very strange letter. If anyone finds this letter, No, I would never harm myself, my kids, or my wife. If something happens to me, please investigate my wife, Chris Watts. He left this letter in his old bachelor room. His parents found it later, of course. We have to wonder why he wrote this. Was he afraid Shanann would kill him? Why? She never threatened his life. She just asked why he suddenly changed. And why he was letting their marriage fall apart. She just wanted the truth. Did he write it knowing what would happen? That evening, Chris finally spoke. He told Shanann he was terrified of the new baby, that Bella and Cece were enough, and he didn't want a third child. First, he wanted a son, and now he doesn't. I don't get it.
She was puzzled with his reaction as to why he didn't want this child, and it was just very strange, very abnormal, and for the father of her children to not want this son. What was going on with him? What was he thinking?
Shanann asked him, "Does that mean you want me to have an abortion?" He just stayed silent. Then, to everyone's shock, he said he was sure he'd end up in hell. Shanann didn't know what he meant by that. But we know Chris had been giving Shanann a dangerous drug, oxycodone, all week. He was poisoning her, hoping she'd miscarry. Then he writes letters about fearing his wife, and who knows what else. Again writing nonsense in his bachelor room. What a jerk. On August 7th, Shanann's mother, Sandy, as always, cut the girls' and Chris's hair in her salon. Then the Watts family left for the airport around 5:00 p.m. and flew to Colorado. Shannon's parents didn't know it was the last time they'd see their granddaughters and daughter. It's hard to imagine what Shannon's last days in August 2018 were like, but I hope to convey them to you. On August 8th, a Wednesday, Shanann did a big cleanup. She cleaned the house, unpacked the suitcases, and took Cece to the doctor for a scheduled checkup. She posted her last photo on Facebook. In this photo, you can't see how unhappy she was at that moment. But she was, even though it seemed Chris was back to normal after returning. She felt a darkness emanating from him, a darkness she attributed to his anger because she had argued with his parents. She had no idea what he was planning, yet she could sense it, as on August 9th, Chris sent her a very strange photo of a doll. Allegedly, Bella covered her doll like this, and Chris took a picture and sent it to Shanann. He also sent the same photo to his father, claiming Shanann sent it to him. He probably thought the police wouldn't check his phone. Shanann, shocked by the photo, posted it on her Facebook page, writing, "I really don't know what to think about this. Imagine divorcing your husband and he sends you such a photo without explanation. What would you think?" She knew. She had to know. Deep down, she saw the mimicry of her murder and her children's murder. A killer always reveals himself before the murder. You just have to take his signals seriously, not as a joke. Because those signals are like road signs. You have to follow them and believe they're there for a reason. You can't pretend you didn't see them. If it says, "Stop, railroad," it means a train is coming. Regarding that picture, I have to blame Shanann's friends. They all saw that picture, and they started liking it, putting hearts, laughing emojis, and so on. They knew Shanann was getting a divorce. And that photo wasn't funny at all, but actually resembled a corpse. I can't understand how a modern American woman could find such a photo and post on Facebook funny. It's a bit unclear to me. Why didn't any of those friends call Shanann and ask what was going on? They knew Shanann was pregnant. Unfortunately, this was the last post Shanann made on her Facebook profile. That same evening, Chris secretly met with his lover, Nicole. He asked her a crucial question. Would she like to try anal sex with him? This was so important to this scoundrel that he hated his wife because she didn't want to do it with him. And to his delight, Nicole said, "Yes." Not only did she say yes, but she spent 2 days preparing for the event by watching pornography and guides on anal sex. Unbelievable. On August 10th, Shanann packed up and went on a business trip to Arizona with her friends.
She's gotten invited to a convention for her multi-level marketing company, and she leaves behind her 2 daughters with their father, really not knowing the darkness that's getting ready to explode in her life and take over the family.
Her best friend, Nicole Atkinson, a very smart woman, was also at the business training. I can't believe they didn't discuss the meaning of that creepy photo. Nicole Atkinson noticed Shanann wasn't feeling well and was very quiet.
And on this trip, her friends and colleagues even describe her as not eating, not sleeping, that she just became a real mess, and they got very worried about her.
Of course, she was distracted. She felt something was brewing and was suffering. She actually loved that jerk, unfortunately.
She was constantly texting him, wanting to know how the children are, and he didn't always text back.
How could he reply when he spent all Saturday organizing his secret meeting with his lover? How could he manage? Now I'll tell you what he actually planned and how it all backfired on him. Chris got a ticket to a game at work. He told Shanann he was going to the game with a colleague and that he'd hire a babysitter to watch their kids. The girl arrived at the scheduled time. Chris ordered pizza for her and the girls and left. But not in his truck, in Shanann's Lexus. He picked up Nicole Kessinger around 5:30 p.m. And together, they went to Lazy Dog Restaurant for a romantic dinner. It was a big night for them. After dinner, they were going to her place for anal training. After chatting and dining, Chris went to pay the $63 bill.
He makes a critical mistake.
He accidentally used the joint account card he shared with Shanann. They both had access to that account. And as we all know, when we pay with a card, we get a text message right away. Chris and Shanann received it immediately. Shanann was shocked. First, she realized Chris wasn't at the game, but at Lazy Dog Restaurant. Secondly,
she can tell by how much this dinner cost that Christopher is not eating alone. She decides to do some investigating. She goes online, she finds the restaurant, looks at the menu, and realizes that this amount of money is way too much for one person. So she calls him. She calls Chris. He's actually still at the restaurant with his mistress, and she confronts him about the information that she has. He doesn't really have a good answer.
"Oh, honey, I'm sorry. I was hungry. My colleague is here, this and that."
He talked about drinking a lot of beer and eating food. He was hungry. But it was at this point where Shanann knew Christopher was having an affair.
She immediately understood everything. You can't lie to your wife without her noticing and finding out. It's impossible. Chris also realized he was caught, and he went with Nicole to her apartment. It's too much to say that Chris wasn't in the mood for pleasures, let alone any anal exhibitions. He rushed home to be back by 10 p.m. because the babysitter had to leave then. The next day, Sunday, the 12th, August, Chris suddenly starts acting like the most exemplary husband and father. He started texting Shanann about what she could make him for lunch. Then he began tidying up the whole house, took the kids to a play area for a birthday party. He brought them home, bathed them, made them dinner, and put them to bed. He even read them a bedtime story. Shanann called him from the airport, and Chris replied with something like, "I can't wait for you to get home, love," and so on. Simply unbelievable.
And her best friend picks her up from the airport, drops her off.
I must admit, I get chills watching Shanann enter her home like a trap with no escape.
That's the last time she's seen alive.
Monday, August 13th. Chris went to work around 5 a.m., and in the brown house on Saratoga Trail, not a sound was heard. Everything was calm and quiet.
Shanann had had a doctor's appointment that day, and her best friend was expecting a call from her. But she can't get a hold of Shanann, and she's not answering her text messages, she's not answering her call, and so she asks the police to come do a welfare check. This is when the police will just drive by a place, knock on the door, "Hi, how are you?"
We were out of town for a business trip this weekend.
Right.
And I dropped her off at 2 o'clock this morning. She's 15 weeks pregnant. She wasn't feeling well. And she had a doctor's appointment this morning at 9, and I told her to let me know if she needed me to take her. She's got 2 little girls. And she was very distraught over the weekend, wasn't eating normally or drinking, and we kept trying to force it on her because she's pregnant.
Mm-hmm.
Her husband and her supposedly are separating, but she didn't know this. She thought they were just having issues. He disclosed that to me today. Because I called him and I was like, "Have you talked or heard from Shanann since she left for work this morning? Because I can't get a hold of her." I've called, I've texted. Her car's in the garage. Her shoes she wears every single day are right in the front door.
Police came, and they discovered nobody there at this point.
Shanann, are you home? Police department, if anyone's inside, make yourself known.
So the best friend gets a hold of Christopher on the phone.
Chris told them, "I'm on my way home. Don't go in until I get there."
What you can see in the video is very strange because Christopher, instead of pulling up into his own driveway, he parks down the street a little bit across the street. And you see him kind of doing something in the back of his truck. And then he comes, and at this point, everything is videotaped from the police officer's point of view. And we start to see Chris's lies unravel.
Scott, how you doing? How's it going? So this is the only vehicle she would have?
He unlocked the house for them, let them in, and they started searching for Shanann and the girls.
You checked upstairs, she's not there. I just want to make sure she's not passed out somewhere. Is she diabetic?
But there was no trace or sound from them.
Any friends she would be hanging out with? I know, I guess her parents are out of state.
Across country, North Carolina.
Does she work? Yeah, she works from home. Oh, from home? She works just as her lifeline.
One of the things I remember from watching these police videos was that Christopher was very unemotional. You have seen in the past his emotion and his joy when he's playing with his children. And now he's being told that his kids and his wife, they're all missing. And you just don't see very much from him at all.
Cold as ice, like a carnival barker.
She got here at 2. Okay. I went to work this morning about 5:15, 5:30.
Nicole Atkinson didn't say anything, but she watched him suspiciously the whole time. And when she saw that Shanann hadn't taken her phone or lupus medication, everything was clear to her.
This is her purse?
That's her purse. It's her medication. She takes these, her medication's still in here.
Imitrex. That's something she takes for migraine. She took more Imitrex this last month than she ever had before, but that's just because she was in North Carolina with humidity. Said she's going to her friend's house to take the kids. When did she tell you that? This morning, when we were talking about 4 or 5 o'clock.
Then neighbor Nathan Trenastic called them to come over and watch the footage from his security camera. And that gentleman solved the whole case for them. Who else but a man from our own roots?
Is this on continually recording?
Yep. Well,
it's not. Is it motion or is it? Okay, so it's motion.
Any motion event that happens, I get cars driving from this street,
The footage clearly shows Chris parking his truck in the garage that night. And then he starts pacing, going in and out, carrying something, taking it out, and doing this several times. When Chris saw that, he grabbed his head. And then he said he was actually loading work tools into his truck. However, neighbor Trenastic immediately noticed his strange behavior.
His body language is very enclosed. He's crossing his arms and he's rocking back and forth. And it's just all very wrong and very guilty about this man.
She's pregnant as well.
Trenastic, as a true member of the Dinaric race, didn't miss a thing. And when Chris went outside, he immediately shared his observations with the officer.
No.
Rocks back and forth, and it's good. And walk back and forth a couple times. It just seems kind of odd to me. Why would he pull that stuff up and murder that? I'm completely honest with you. My wife and I were kind of wondering when she was on vacation if something happened, because I've heard them full out screaming at each other at the top of their lungs. It's crazy.
Does it? And that's pretty recently?
Yeah. If he loads his stuff, he normally just walks back and forth, because I get him on camera.
What does he usually load up?
All he usually has is a lunch box and a book bag, looks like a computer, and usually a water jug. That's it. He doesn't look worried. He looks like he's trying to cover his tracks.
So this is when most likely the police knew they had him.
And we should be proud that our man was the first and most instrumental in solving this mysterious crime. Kudos to Trenastic if you're watching this.
Christopher talked about going to sleep with his wife, that they did have an argument, but they went to sleep, and that she must have gotten up to go to work early. But him getting in the truck and having it on video, he was getting caught. So that evening, after the police left, Christopher decides to spend the night in the family home alone.
The whole time he was in the house, Chris was talking to his lover about how his wife disappeared, what he would do, and so on. But she noticed there were no sheets on his bed. Where did the sheets go? And if Shanann disappeared under such mysterious circumstances with the kids and didn't take her mobile phone and necessary medication, What would she need sheets for? And I'm convinced that Nicole realized he was up to something.
And then the next day, he starts giving interviews with reporters. And you can still see the same rocking motion, his arms wrapped around himself in a kind of a protective manner. And he also is still very unemotional.
If they're not safe right now, that's what's tearing me apart. Because if they are safe, they're coming back. But if they're not, this has got to stop. Like, somebody has to come forward.
There's no tears, there's no anger. He even seemed to smile a couple of times, which I found very strange and very dark.
I just want them back. I just want them to come back.
He was grinning like a hyena in that interview. You could see he was happy they were gone. But watch him close his eyes whenever he mentions Bella's name.
Bella's 4, Celeste's 3. Shanann, Bella, Celeste.
Something about Bella bothered him.
The police watched these interviews and they took him in for more questioning. And this was the complete unraveling of Christopher's bogus story about what happened to his wife.
That morning, Anadarko informed them that Chris was apparently involved with a colleague, Nicole Kessinger. And of course, someone from the company reported it to Nicole. She immediately deleted all messages, calls, and photos from her phone. She went to the police station with her father to tell everything she knew.
You're not being interrogated as a criminal suspect. We're here to understand your relationship with Chris and what you know about Chris and his family. Did you meet his children?
Nope.
During June and July?
He told me that he was living in the basement, and he said, we're separated, but we're not divorced, and we're gonna get ready to sell the house. I was just like, why? Fix this. Find a way to fix this. Make it work, you know? And I was like trying to push him to do it, and he seemed pretty reluctant to do it. He didn't want to. And then he said, she told me that she's pregnant, and she told me that the kid is not mine. That is what he told me.
But Chris didn't know his mistress was in another interrogation room at the same time as him.
I don't have another one.
You sure?
I'm sure.
Okay. Would you tell me if you did?
Yes.
Okay. So, again, highly trained investigator over here, right? I see pictures of you from a few years ago, and I see you standing before me now. Okay, you've gotten pretty fit. Okay. You can imagine when guys start cheating or want to cheat, that's what happens.
Yes.
So tell me about it.
I did not cheat on my wife.
They put him on a polygraph, of course, and like any narcissist, he thought he'd get away with it. Of course, a total fool.
Do you know where Shanann is now?
No.
Did you physically cause Shanann's disappearance?
No.
You did not pass the polygraph test, right? Okay. So now we need to talk about what actually happened. I feel like you're probably ready to do that.
I didn't lie to you on that polygraph, I promise. I'm a nervous person. Like, every question I ask, every question, it felt like I wouldn't say the right thing. That's not how the polygraph works.
So at a certain point, they asked Christopher if he would be willing to talk more about the situation, about what happened, if they brought Christopher's father in. Christopher said yes, and his father came in and sat down with him. It wasn't very long until Christopher broke down and told his father how he got into a fight with Shanann. He wasn't really happy with the baby, and how Shanann got very upset with him and very emotionally distraught and went in and smothered their children. And that him, in his reaction to this, then he decided to smother his wife. He confessed about what he did, the horrors that he put this family through. And the police had him draw a map of where he left his wife and 2 baby girls.
And the police immediately took all measures to find the bodies of the girls. The unfortunate woman.
But the police were still not ready to accept this as a fact, and they were still knowing that something more was going on.
Shanann choking, strangling Celeste, and you get her off of Celeste, did you think about calling an ambulance?
So I said, you got in there blue and limp. And I've never seen something like that in my life. I mean, she just like laid over, like nothing she wasn't moving at all, no gasp of breath. She was totally just blue.
So Chris, you're doing the show for a long time.
I know.
I know a lot about psychology and as far as like what people are thinking. And most parents will never even want to fathom that their kid is dead. Even if their kid's stiff, blue in bed, and stiff like been dead all night, they still call an ambulance to see if someone can revive their child.
Even though Chris claimed Shanann killed the kids, and then he strangled her in a fit of rage, the inspector listening to him wasn't fooled, and he told him,
what it looks like is that you found a new life, and the only way to get that new life was to get rid of the old life. And I think that you killed these girls before their mom came home, and then killed Shanann. And that's what we're kind of left, that's what we have to believe, because it just doesn't make sense. I mean, to her point, if I walked in and my kid was decapitated, I'd call an ambulance, right? So,
knowing there's no hope.
It just doesn't make sense.
And that inspector was completely right.
We'll never know exactly what happened that night, what the discussion was, what made him crack and explode and murder his family.
Chris Watts later admitted to the inspectors that he put his children to sleep. And when they fell asleep, he began to smother them one by one with pillows. And he believed he had killed them. But actually, they just passed out. Then Shanann arrived from her trip, left the suitcases upstairs, and entered the bedroom. I believe Chris was lying on the bed pretending to sleep at that moment. Shanann changed and lay down in bed. She was only wearing a shirt and underwear. Maybe she quietly said, "Christopher, I want to talk to you." Maybe she said nothing. Maybe she just kissed him on the forehead or cheek. And then this monster opened his eyes and grabbed her by the neck. She didn't even manage to scream. And then, holding her with that iron grip, he got up and climbed on her. With all his weight, he pressed down on her stomach where the baby was. And at that moment, a miscarriage occurred. The baby came out of her womb. Shanann was in such shock that she didn't even speak or cry out. She died with her eyes open, looking into the face and eyes of her monster husband whom she loved most in the world. There's no more terrible death. When he realized she was dead, Chris got up and saw the blood flowing from her womb. He wrapped her in a sheet and bedding. At that moment, his little daughter Bella came in and asked him, "What's happening to Mom, Dad?" He was first shocked when he saw Bella. Wasn't Bella dead? I smothered her with a pillow. Then he composed himself and said that Mom wasn't well and that he'd have to take her to the hospital. He carried his wife's body to the garage, then went out and drove the truck into the garage. He lifted the dead Shanann and placed her between the front and back seats on the floor. Then he went for the kids who were still alive. He brought them to the truck, put them in the back seat, and buckled them up. And then they set off. They drove for about an hour to Survey 319. Bella, seeing her dead mother on the floor beneath her feet, asked, "Dad, will Mom be okay?" And this hellish monster told his child, "Yes, son, she will." Arriving around 6:00 a.m. at the mentioned location, he first took Shanann out of his car. Now, I don't believe he dug the grave then. I think he did it much earlier. He threw Shanann into the grave, and she fell face down. And then he covered her. He forgot to bury the bloody bedding. He threw it somewhere there on the side in that field next to the platform. And let me note, all this was watched through the truck window by his little daughter Bella. Chris now comes to his vehicle and opens the door on the side where Cece is in her seat. He takes her blanket, puts it over her face, and suffocates her. When he lifted the blanket a few minutes later, Cece's face was blue. She was dead. Bella was in shock. Chris opens the door behind which Bella is.
Bella, the oldest, asked him, "Daddy, are you going to do to me what you did with Cece?"
But he just stayed silent. He grabbed her blanket and put it over her head. Bella screamed, "Daddy, please don't. Please, Daddy."
"Please, no, Daddy, no."
And that's the sentence that will ring in his head for the rest of his life.
Bella did try and fight and did try to get away.
But she didn't stand a chance. Her dad, whom she loved and trusted, was fully committed to his crime. And he killed her.
It was absolutely heartbreaking to hear this. But then what he did is even more horrifying, if you can believe this. He takes his two beautiful baby girls, takes them up to a petroleum battery tank into this small opening, and he shoves his daughters through the holes.
He even broke their bones to make them fit through.
They even found out later that it de-skinned. It took the skin off the children when he shoved them through these holes. This was complete evil. Satan had completely taken over this man to do this to these children after what he had did to his wife. When this story started coming out to the media, Americans were horrified and disgusted with what happened. But luckily, this crime was wrapped up quickly because of Christopher's story unraveling so quickly. But it's still, to this day, people talk about what happened to these two little girls.
So all of this has to do with just Chris.
Chris Watts.
What kind of father could be such a monster?
Chris Watts.
So Chris actually murdered his daughters twice.
Chris Watts.
Is that besides being a f***ing asshole, he's also a liar.
Chris Watts.
According to Chris in these interviews, he did not think he was going to get life in prison.
Chris Watts pleaded guilty to all 4 charges. He got 4 life sentences for killing his wife, 2 daughters, and unborn son.
In addition, Chris's life in prison has really taken some strange turns. He became a pen pal with a woman who has since taken all of his letters and published them. What we've discovered from this book is that he confessed to trying to kill his 2 daughters before he killed his wife. In the US prison system, people that go in that are accused of hurting children are never treated well. And this might be the only solace to a lot of the country, including myself.
He found some kind of enlightenment in prison by reading the Bible and became a devout believer.
He even talks about how he never could have imagined he could have such a relationship with God. I can't imagine a God who could ever forgive this type of behavior.
He even dreams of being released and becoming a priest. I just don't know which church or religion. On every major holiday, he writes letters to his wife and kids he killed, saying things like, "Daddy loves you very much, kids," and so on.
When asked about his mistress, Nicole Kessinger, Christopher Watts quotes Proverbs 7, which discusses to never trust the adulterous woman. He has never talked about any involvement from Nicole Kessinger in the murders. However, quoting the Bible with this verse can only make one wonder, How much was Nicole Kessinger involved in the murders of this family?
Nicole Kessinger simply vanished after everything. She changed her name and likely her appearance, and is in witness protection. So no one knows where she is now or what happened to her. But I don't doubt if she runs out of money, she'll publish her story, like Scott Peterson's mistress.
My conclusion with this incredible, horrifying story is that you just never know. You just never know what's around you, who a person is, or what they're capable of doing. The tragedy that has fallen upon this family should never have happened.
He killed his pregnant wife and kids for anal sex, but now he's where he should be and can focus on his perversions for life.
How can we know when someone's going to snap, how they're going to snap, and what they're going to do? Do we get to this point where each of us starts taking our spouses to a psychiatrist to make sure that we're not married to a psychopath? I just don't know the answer to this question. But just keep your eyes open and pay attention.
Maybe it's better to take your future boyfriend or fiancé for a psychiatric evaluation first. And if he passes, then to the registrar. Because as we see from this horrific crime, even behind the mask of the best father and husband, there can be a monster and a killer.
This is me. If something happens to me or my family or all of us, that
I want everybody to just come home. Like wherever they're at, come home.
Only for like a second, because I just saw the lights come on, and it was more just like, you're an idiot.
Let's find this evil creature.
Why did you do this to my child?
That they were looking for sensationalism and they were looking for the monster. And I'm not the monster image.